In 1946, Sonny Forelli was born, and he became the leader in his 20s in 1966. From 1966, Sonny was able to establish the Forelli family in Portland, where they had a restaurant called Marco's Bistro, or St. Mark's Bistro, their first headquarters, and where they started. Sonny was able to expand Forelli territory into the surrounding areas of the restaurants in St. Mark's. After that, they conquered territory in Red Light District and parts of Chinatown. In 1971, Sonny suspected one of his soldiers by the name of Tommy Vercetti to take over the family and replace him as the leader. Basically, Sonny was jealous of Tommy's, so he sent Tommy into a fake assassination job where Tommy was ambushed by a bunch of goons and he was able to kill all of them, which landed him in jail for 15 years. With the problem of Tommy gone, Sonny is now able to expand his empire. Sonny is able to expand his territory in Staunton Island. He takes over Fort Staunton, Newport, Belleville Park, and also territories in Vegeta Gardens in Shortside Whale. Sonny was able to also invest and take a share into a company that was associated with counting votes for the elections for the mayor of Liberty City. With that, they were able to lobby the mayor of Liberty City and have the mayor in their pocket working for them as their puppet. By 1984, this is what the criminal organization looks like. This is not my chart. This is a chart from a made by a YouTuber named The Professional. As you can see, Sonny is the boss. His cousin Giorgio is his consigliere and advisor. His brother Marco is his underboss. Franco, his other brother, is one of his capos. Mike, one of his other brothers, is also a capo. And they also have a bunch of soldiers and associates willing to die for them. By 1984, these people were the most powerful mafia in the United States, being able to not only have the mayor in their pocket, but have this much of territory. This is their map. I estimate it to be their map and their territories in 1984. In 1984, Giorgio lends a bunch of money to a manager called Barry, the manager of Phil Collins. But Barry refused to pay Giorgio his money, so Giorgio sends his goons to intimidate Barry. And there's this long war between this producer and Giorgio, which ends by Barry being forced to pay Giorgio his money. In 1986, things were changing in the criminal world. In history, we have a period called Industrialization, where shithole backward medieval garbage European countries create industries. Meaning, if a smith in the medieval Europe was able to only make one sword in a day, a factory was able to make hundreds of swords in a day. And not just swords, but firearms, more advanced weapons. This is what we call the period of industrialization. The shithole medieval garbage European countries were able to flourish, while old civilizations such as Ottomans, the Persians, the Chinese, the Indians, these people could not industrialize themselves, and so they were conquered by the Europeans and colonized by them because they couldn't industrialize themselves. We had a similar period of industrialization in criminal world, where shithole, stupid fucking gangsters in South America were able to create their own factories, their own labs, where they produced cocaine, and were able to ship it into the United States and sell it for a much, much bigger profit. And that's how the cartels emerged in South America. They were able to take over their own governments. Look at the cartel in Mexico. The old mafioso order where you go to these fucking stores and you force them to pay you protection. You go to these poor people and lend them a bunch of money and then send your loan sharks to harass them. This was too much effort. The criminal organizations, such as the cartels, were now able to just produce their own product and sell it for profit without doing all of that extra effort that the mafias put in. And sooner or later, these cartels were able to replace the mafias in the world of organized crime. In 1980s, Florida was the center of these drugs, like cocaine. Drug cartels from everywhere were pouring money and cocaine into Florida. Former street gangsters and hood boogers, nothing burgers, were able to produce their own drugs, were able to produce their own weapons. Sonny Forelli, the leader of the Forellies, was able to see how much profit and how much more power he could gain from this. But also he was aware if he doesn't enter into the industrialized game of producing cocaine, he wouldn't be able to compete with the cartel that was going to emerge in liberty. Civilizations such as Persia, China, and India, and Ottomans were defeated and colonized by European industrialists. And so in 1986, Sonny decides to send Tommy, who was recently freed from jail, to do a drug deal with Vance Brothers, where they got a bunch of drugs and a bunch of money for exchange. But the deal goes wrong, and armed men destroy the deal. Tommy is able to survive. So he goes on to find out who was behind this scandal. And he finds out that Ricardo Diaz, Vice City's most powerful drug lord, was behind the hit. So he goes to his mansion and kills him. So Tommy found the drugs, Tommy found the money, Tommy found the guy who fucked up the deal. So he returned the money to the Forellis, right? No, he didn't. He built his own empire. He built his own drug cartel. And so after a while, Sonny realizes that Tommy has not returned his money and has played him all this long. And so he decides to start a war with Tommy. He sends his goons to Vice City to collect taxes and take over Tommy's empire. He himself personally goes to his mansion and tries to take over his empire. But Tommy kills him. And from now on, the Forellis collapse starts. After Sonny's death, the Forellis are no longer are going to recover from this disaster. Why do you think that is? Because they failed to industrialize their business. They failed to enter the drug business. Other mafia families were able, such as the Leones by 1998, able to enter the drug business, but the Forellis couldn't. And just like those old civilizations who were conquered by industrialists, Forellis were also going to lose their territories and lose their influence. After Sonny's death in 1986, his brother Marco succeeds him. But Marco is not a competent leader because the Sindacos, another mafia family, are able to take over Red Light District, and the Leones, another rival mafia family in Liberty City, are able to take over the surrounding territories of their headquarters in St. Mark's. Before 1992, all three mafia families agreed to invest in a casino in Las Venturas called Caligula's Casino. But Marco, in his stupidest move, decides to order a hit on Johnny Sindaco, the underboss of the Sindaco family. He fails, and Johnny Sindaco is saved. But after that, Salvatore Leone, the leader of the Leone family, goes to Las Venturas and takes over the casino. So Marco orders another hit on him, which miserably fails. And so in 1992, Salvatore Leone orders C.J. Johnson to go and kill Marco in his restaurant. Another stupid thing that Marco did was that he still holded his headquarters in that fucking restaurant. That restaurant was surrounded by Leone territory. Why would you hold your headquarters in there? It's surrounded by enemy territory. And he paid the price because CJ goes to Liberty City and kills Marco. And so this is another fatal disaster for the Forellies. After Marco's death, Franco Forelli, his brother, succeeds him. After Marco's death, Franco moves their headquarters from St. Mark's to Fort Staunton because the Leones are able to almost completely kick them out. The only territory that they hold in there is their restaurant. In 1998, Roger C. Hall, the mayor of Liberty City who works for the Forellies, decides to build a tunnel system that connects all three islands to each other. The workers and their unions think that the mayor is going to put them out of the job, so they decide to organize a strike against the mayor. The Leones take over the strikes and use the ports that you see on the map, the gray areas, use these ports to smuggle drugs and sell them. This is what the Forellies are not able to do. They do not have these ports. They do not have access to these ports. And therefore, they are far behind the entire thing about industrializing your, making your own drugs and selling your own drugs, blah, all that shit, okay? Anyways, after that, the Sicilian Mafia visits Liberty City. They start to, quote-unquote, negotiate with other gangsters, such as the Triads, the Forellies, and the Diablos. Are they really there to negotiate, quote-unquote, negotiate? No. They are there to take over Liberty City. How? They realize that the Forellies are no longer the great power that they used to be. Now the Sindacos and the Leones are going to emerge. So they decide to start an indirect war with the Leones and the Sindacos. The Leones are involved in a war with the Diablos and the Triads, with the Sicilians supporting the Triads and Diablos. Similar things happen between the Sindacos and the Forellies, where by then the Forellies are become a puppet of the Sicilian Mafia. The Sicilian Mafia starts to support them against the Sindacos. They're now a puppet. They're no longer the great power. Why? Because after the Sicilians start to negotiate with them, Roger C. Hall, the mayor of Liberty City, gets killed by the Leones and is assassinated. From then, the Sicilians are able to take over the next mayor, O'Donovan. Now, why did that happen? Why did the Leones kill the mayor? Because the Sicilians told the Forellies to tell their mayor to arrest Salvatore Leone, the leader of the Leone family. And so in retaliation, they kill their mayor. Now the Forellies no longer have any power. Now they are just a puppet of the Sicilian Mafia to fuck with the Leones. The war between the Leones and the Sindacos goes along, stretches too long. Sindacos decide to negotiate with the Forellies and start truce, but the Leones ruin it by placing a gadget in Paoli Sindaco's car, and then they, by controlling the car, run over Forelli goons, which ruins the negotiation, and there's not going to be any truce between them. So the war drags on and continues and weakens both families. Now the Leones use the Yardies, a street gang, to take over Forelli territory and help them to take over Newport from the Forellies. The Forellies lose Newport. The Leones also use Southside Hoods to take over Forelli territory in Vegeta Gardens. And so the war between the Sindacos and the Forellies end by the killing of Paoli Sindaco. They're done. The done of the Sindaco family. By the end of the war, the Forelli's only territory is Fort Staunton. They lost their mayor, and also they lost their company that associated with counting the votes. Yeah, that was also destroyed. And O'Donovan, their supposed candidate, is now controlled by the Sicilians. Therefore, they have lost everything, and now they only have Fort Staunton and a restaurant. But Donald Love orders Tony Cipriani, the soldier of Leone family, to blow up the entire Fort Staunton with bombs. The Forellies try to prevent it, but they're not successful, and Fort Staunton, their entire their second headquarters, entirety of their second headquarters gets blown up. And the cartel, few years later in 2001, the cartel settles in Fort Staunton. Exactly what I told you will happen to them. Giorgio and Franco are dead. And so the Forelli family becomes the Forelli brothers. Mike and a bunch of other capos decide to settle in their former headquarters in St. Mark's. And so they form a new gang. But they also get killed in 2001 by Clods under the orders of the Leones. And they are wiped out and they are never to be seen again in GTA series. Anyways, that was the story of the Forelli crime family, or better to say, the Forelli brothers in GTA, the punching bag of Grand Theft Auto series. If you don't subscribe, you're a bitch.